Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, the Zelda game with the strongest handshake makes the best first impression. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I am always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great. Can I ask you a question, Patrick?
You have to now, yeah.
Do you think you'd be happy if you were a hobbit?
Oh, yeah. What?
I know.
Yes.
I think so too.
Well, I mean, maybe. I just watched Fellowship last Friday. Watched it with some of my friends. And we were drinking. At some point, I got out my copy of Fellowship to read passages from it as we were watching.
Sounds amazing.
This is the kind of night we were having. It was just absolutely the best. And yeah, I mean, I think of course I would be happy. The thing is, we meet a lot of unhappy hobbits.
Yes.
Not necessarily like our main character hobbits, although they do experience a lot of bad stuff, but just in the light of Bilbo, all of the rest of the hobbits seem a little grouchy.
That's a good point.
A little set in their ways.
Yeah.
So I feel, but hey, who isn't? You know, if we were watching a movie that was a story about someone in my life who isn't me and they're about to go on an adventure, I'm sure I would look like a weird curmudgeon in their story, right?
I also like to think that if I were a hobbit, I'd be an open-minded hobbit.
Yeah, okay.
I think would be, I'm going to go ahead and claim it.
Yeah.
That would be my thing if I were a hobbit.
That you would be one of those open-minded hobbits.
Old Mark Mitchell and his little hobbit hovel.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He's too open-minded for my liking.
I like that you don't have a hobbit name. It's just it's just Mark Mitchell. Do you think so? Okay, there are hobbits that are more prone to adventure. Do you think you are one of those hobbits, or you're just open-minded about people who do go on adventures?
I think I'm open-minded. I don't go
You're
on
not actually
adventures.
going on adventures.
No,
Okay,
no,
all
no.
right.
But I'm open. But if people
Right.
want to,
Right. So
I say
you're not,
good for them as I'm sitting in my little hobbit hole.
You're a little bit of a brandy buck, is what you are.
Why? Thank you. The kindest thing.
Speaking of kind things that we have to just say over and over again, my copy of Sonic Forces and the program by which you can borrow it from me is a perfect borrowing program. You should participate in it. All you gotta do is email us at nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com and give us a mailing address so we can send you my copy of Sonic Forces, not Frontiers, for the Nintendo Switch. You play it for as long as you want. You send it back. I pay for postage both ways. There may be a copy of Untitled Goose Game. Again, it's not Sonic Frontiers. That might be in there, but Untitled Goose Game. Either way, you play it for as long as you want. You send it back. I pay for postage both ways.
Did we say the email address?
Yeah, you said it with me.
Oh, did I?
I think so.
Wow, went into a little bit of a fugue state there.
Let's try it again. Nintendo Cartridge Society
At gmail.com.
And I'm not going to listen back to this. Our listeners have to tell us whether we just did it now twice or whether we both zoned out. Let us know which one of us is losing their mind.
Well, here's another thing you can do is you can friend us on Switch. Our friend codes are in the show notes for every episode, and we love when people add us. We love growing our friend networks on Nintendo Switch, so take a second and join us.
Yeah, super fun to see those pop. I accept every friendship request, so get in there. You can see what I'm playing. You'll be like, Shovel Knight again. Okay. Still playing Shovel Knight. Still playing the 3 games that he plays, which are Tetris, Hades, and Shovel Knight. That's it.
Hey, how come we haven't had a Tetris Maximus Cup for a while?
Hey, indeed.
Did we ever get one for Splatoon 3?
No, we did not get one for Splatoon 3. And we got to get one for Pokemon, right?
I feel like if we do not get one for Pokemon,
Then it's over.
then it's just over. We shouldn't expect any more.
I mean, we may be getting to the point where, because Tetris 99 has been around and kicking for a while now, right?
Yeah, probably 5 years.
I mean, it's been my game of the year for 4 consecutive years. So yeah, I think it's been a while. But yeah, they have to stop supporting it actively at some point,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
It may as well be now.
I just feel like they should at
Yeah.
least do one more big Maximus Cup.
One more that's like every day is a new. Maybe that was it.
Oh, maybe that was
maybe
it.
we witnessed the final one when it was like every day was a new theme. Oh, since you started your computer, we activated your computer somehow by talking to it via Siri. None of this matters. You should join our Discord where we have other conversations that don't matter and some conversations that do. If you would like to be on our Discord server, you should email us or hit us up on Twitter. We will be happy to let you in. It's a bunch of fun, cool people having conversations about Nintendo basically all the time. Look, we've got or we just had at this point, by the time this episode comes out, a Nintendo Indie World Showcase where, let me tell you, the conversation I expect is going to be great.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and
expect that it was. We're recording this on Tuesday evening.
That's right. But I am here in my hobbit hole just saying,
that's right.
For sure, the conversation, amazing.
Yes, conversation.
Bully on everyone.
And I love removing any tense on that verb. Conversation, amazing. Not that it will be or that it was or that it is. It's just conversation, amazing. I love it. Mark, we're screwing around too much here. We have to determine a ranking for the introductory chapters to the Legend of Zelda games. Let's get into it. Now, we did a pretty thorough job last week of defining what each of these chapters actually were, what constituted the opening of these individual games. But I think we need to kind of recap conceptually what we're doing here, and then just like quickly talk about each one as what they are before we start ranking them against each other.
Yeah, I think so too. And we got a little bit of feedback from last week's episode that we call it a bunch of different things: intros, opening chapters. And
if there's like a prologue or like any, it's tough to say exactly what the right word is.
Yeah,
we're just it's kind of a gut feeling. Sometimes it's, for us, I think, was driven by the game either showing us what it is or showing us how it's different from previous games in the series. And like what this specific entry has to offer.
But kind of what we like narrowed down on is what we're considering the opening chapters or the intro of these games is up to the point that we felt like almost like the main tutorial of the game
is over.
Ends, where you are given the enough tools to then go out and
just tackle the world.
The world.
And look, a number of times that happens because you get a sword and an owl says go, right? Like that is a lot of these is the owl says go. But not all the time. And one of the things that we did want to, I think, specifically address here is whether these sort of like title screen with its like music and whatever sort of like setting it evokes, whether or not that counts as like introductory material.
Right, like an example of that is Ocarina of Time. You know, it has a very beautiful, specific piece of music that plays while you're seeing a Hyrule field
at night, and a young Link riding on Epona, and like it's iconic, and it is very, it's very good and it's very beautiful. I don't know if I personally count it as like introductory material to the game, though.
Right. I almost feel like you could do an entire ranking just of the title screens.
And don't think that we won't do that at some point. We will absolutely do that at some point. We've done over 600 episodes of this show. We're going to need more topics. But I do think that there are instances where they are absolutely part of the opening chapter, like Link's Awakening, for example, of Link being on the high sea, the raft being tossed, him waking up on this island. That all happens before you press start and like actually begin the game. And like, well, that is an appropriate like mood setter. It is like the storytelling, right? Whereas the Ocarina of Time thing, first of all, you turn that on when you see that when you turn the game on to play it for the final time before you fight Ganon as an adult, right? Like it's almost like a welcome back into the world, and less a like introduction to what's about to happen. Um, uh, but that's not really part of the storytelling, if that makes sense. Is that distinction clear?
Yeah, that distinction makes sense to me. And so I guess where I come down on
Come down on it,
whether
Mark.
we include the kind of like title screen experience as part of these introductory chapters,
Yes.
I think like for me there is no hard and fast rule.
Yeah.
It
Sometimes we will, sometimes we won't.
Yeah.
And that has to be it. I mean, and some of it is, like if you compare the original Legend of Zelda to Breath of the Wild, for example, they have very similar screen. Or I mean, I guess they're both just static images, basically, right?
Right. I mean, like the first game probably has more information because it scrolls down and shows you all of the different items that you can get and stuff like that.
And actually, there's a piece of music there too, which Breath of the Wild doesn't have. Breath of the Wild is a very just like a modern video game. Here's the first screen. You're gonna get through this so you can start to experience the thing.
It feels so of like the Switch era to me because
Yes.
it's that pared down feeling that I get from just the Switch UI, and like using a Switch is so pared down compared to using the Wii U or using the Wii. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and that's funny because like I was just thinking about how we're both playing Persona 5 Royal right now on the Switch, and every time because I'm playing a bunch of other games, so I close out of the game in between play sessions, which means I have to like start it up and like get the little like opening thing. It's like, do you want to connect to the internet? And then there's like a take your time, and then there's like some kind of stylish graphics, and then I got to push the button, and then I got to load my thing. And like all of those little like beats, I'm like, oh yeah, this wasn't designed specifically for the Switch. Like the Switch first experiences like Odyssey and that's Super Mario Odyssey, of course, and Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. You like just get right into them. There's very little barrier between you start and you play. But Mark, shall we review game by game what we considered the openings?
Yeah, so this is what just really briefly kind of like running down what we decided last
really
week.
So briefly, like we're not going to take too long.
No,
here.
I mean that seems
it's so brief.
Totally on track with what's going on in this episode so far.
Yeah, that's right.
It's concise and to the point.
To the point.
But because we're going to run those down, which I promise we're going to do any second now, and then we're going to definitively rank them.
That's right.
That's the exercise
Because
today.
one of these is the best, one of them is the worst, and then second,
and so on and so forth.
But we will determine. We will determine that order here. Mark, do you want to go back and forth, sort of describing what we decided the opening chapters were in each of these games?
Sure. Yeah.
And obviously we'll help each other out because look, we took a little bit some notes from last week's episode, but mostly we're going to be remembering these. Right?
I think I have.
I think I got them too.
I think I have it, but we will see for sure. Do you want to start?
Sure. So the Legend of Zelda, we think this is a 2-screen opening. Maybe this one I would include the actual title screen. Link appearing in the thing, going in the cave, getting the sword, and going back out into the world.
Yep, it's dangerous to go alone. Take
this.
this. There you go. Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. So we decided that it is up through Parappa Palace.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get the candle, that first item, and then go back through the cave with the candle so you can see in the darkness.
Yeah.
And then we feel like you have learned everything you need to know in order to go out into the world.
Right. And obviously Zelda 2, we decided a little bit more of a difficult one because even though it presents itself as open, it is fairly linear. There's really no point where you are just like totally unleashed on the world, but that's the closest point to it.
Yep.
And then, okay, a Link to the Past. We have this up through, starting Link in the bed. It's a stormy night. His uncle gets called away. He's getting messages from the princess telepathically, goes to Hyrule Castle, rescues the princess, escapes through the catacombs and out through the sanctuary. And it's at that point when you leave the sanctuary, you leave Zelda there with that old man that you that the game begins.
Yep, because when you get to the sanctuary, you get the download on the Master Sword and what you need to do, and then Hyrule is yours to go explore.
Yes.
Up next is Link's Awakening, and this is another one, like you mentioned earlier in this episode, Patrick, that we are including that title screen experience.
Yeah.
But so, there's like the little animated opening that's not in engine of Link being tossed on an open sea, and then it becomes the in-engine cutscene of Marin finding Link washed up on the shore. You get the title, and then the experience of Link waking up in the house again, going back to the beach, getting his sword, going back through the town and into the mysterious woods, or the mysterious forest. And then at that point, an owl comes down, kind of gives you the lowdown about the windfish, and
Right.
that you're stuck there while the windfish is asleep and all of that. And then once you say, I understand, that is what we're considering the end of the opening chapter.
So I do want to address this for a second because there was a comment in our Discord from Jake who thinks that it maybe ends a little bit earlier. When I'm tempted to agree with him, because when you get the sword on the beach, the owl does appear to you and is like, hoot hoot, you're gonna have to wake up the windfish, hoot hoot, and then goes away. But you do have a second, and then like the music changes too. That it goes from like mysterious beach vibes to like adventure music. But I still think traveling back up through the town, being empowered with the sword, you have to experience that combat before the game truly opens up.
I don't think the owl, in my memory,
He does.
maybe
I played it this morning.
he appears on the beach.
He appears on the beach. Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
When you collect the sword, he appears on the beach.
Okay.
And then he appears again, like as you travel up into the mysterious forest. And he sort of reiterates the windfish, and that's when he tells you to go check out the wind cave, or the tail cave, which you
Right.
will be able to unlock with the key that you find in the woods.
Got it. Okay, so are we sticking with what we determined last week or no?
I'm fine sticking with what we determined last week. But if you want to, if you think it's worth rolling it back to the first time you meet the owl, I still like getting the sword is one thing, but I think using the sword is also part of all of these introductions as well.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, to me, I think it makes more sense to have the intro end. Actually, I mean, I guess I could see it either way.
Either way works for me too.
Yeah.
Let's end it on the beach.
Okay.
Okay, so now you get the sword. The owl first appears, says hoot hoot, you got to wake up the windfish. And then the music changes, and the music change I think is the strongest argument for it being truly where the introduction ends.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm on board.
Next up, we've got Ocarina of Time. We think this is everything that happens in Kokiri Forest at the beginning of the game. So including the Link and Navi team up. Link gets a sword, he gets a shield, he meets everyone in the forest, he meets the Great Deku Tree, who's like, by the way, I'm dying. You have to go inside me and kill the rot that's in there. And the whole dungeon, and then going off on your journey, getting the ocarina from Saria, character's name we didn't look up between last week and this week, and leaving the forest. Again, here comes the owl, hoot hoot, you need to save, you're the hero of time. And then opening out onto Hyrule Field.
Yeah, so it's like you talk to the owl,
Hoot
you
hoot.
say, yes, I understand, and then I don't need you to repeat it,
Please don't repeat it.
and that is the end.
Right.
Great. Majora's Mask. This is another one that's really kind of long. We determined that it goes all the way through the first 3-day cycle.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have that experience of seeing Skull Kid on the moon, like coming at you and shooting the ocarina out of his hands, traveling back in time, because then you truly have understood the entire premise of the game. Right.
So do you think that it is? And I can't remember what we decided. So all of that happens, and then right afterwards, you go back to the Happy Mask salesman. He tells you how to take off the Deku mask.
Yeah.
And then gets mad at you that you don't have Majora's Mask, and he's like, you have to go get it. And then Tattle tells you to go to the swamp.
Yeah. I think it's before that.
You think it's before that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I just, the moment that you go back in time, I feel like, and go back the 3 days, I think then you have enough information to
Okay.
like know what the game is.
Okay. Works for me.
Okay. Wind Waker. This one we've got all the way up through you landing on Windfall Island. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I think it's almost maybe even like right before that. I think it's when you wake up and because
And the King of Red Lions is talking to you.
exactly, yeah, I think that's it.
So he is like just under like the dock at Windfall Island.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as soon as he is done talking to you, he's like, "Now go get the sail
right,
from
right.
Windfall Island."
Right.
Yeah.
So this includes everything that happens on Link's home island.
Outset Island.
Outset. Thank you. I forgot the name of it again. Meeting up with Tetra and her pirates. That big bird thing, sneaking around the Forsaken Fortress, and your first little encounter with Ganon, who then or Ganondorf, who has you tossed into the sea.
Yep, exactly. So up next is Twilight Princess. And for this one, we determined that it's through Faron Woods and up to the entrance of the Forest Temple, but it does not include the Forest Temple.
Right. And remind me why. So this is another game that is like way more linear than it's like sort of open world would actually suggest. But remind me why we stopped it there instead of after the temple.
I don't know. You're the one who wanted to start
I am
it
the
there.
one who I am the one who wanted to. Well,
I think maybe it's because like all the introductory pieces at that point are in place. Like there's nothing that happens to my memory. There's nothing that happens in that first Forest Temple that you're like, okay. You know, like this unlocked a piece of how I experience the world.
Yeah.
You know, like you already have Wolf Link. You've already learned like his combat, how the Twilight works. Like
you've
all
already
that
been
kind
on
of
the
stuff.
horse. Like yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that's why we decided that like the Forest Temple itself wasn't an important part of it.
I guess there's also just so much other stuff to introduce in that game. There's the wolf stuff. There's just like hanging out in the village, like doing chores for people. Like all of that, it just sort of like takes up so much real estate that by the time you get to the dungeon, you're like, oh, thank God, something else.
Right,
like,
because you have to
different.
learn how to control Link,
right,
and all like the stuff Link is going to do. Then you have to control Wolf Link,
right,
and learn all the stuff Wolf Link is
going to
do.
Kind of a double introduction. We're not going to be ranking them separately, but it's kind of a double introduction.
Yep.
Next up is Skyward Sword. Mark, I think I don't remember where we had this one going.
So we decided that it ends after Link like leaves Skyloft.
That's right.
Because Zelda has fallen to the
her death
earth, fallen to the earth, and so you go to the sealed grounds. You meet the Old One who sends Link out to Faron Woods, and that's the end of the intro.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
all the introductory like stuff in Skyloft. The like ceremony with the birds, like all of that.
Right.
You get through all of it.
Groose kind of bullying you at school. Right. All of that.
Yeah.
And then Breath of the Wild, this one seemed kind of obvious. You're getting off the Great Plateau, right? You do the four shrines that give you all of the Sheikah Slate powers, and then you meet with the ghost of the King of Hyrule, who then gives you the paraglider, and then you are off to see the wizard, right?
Yep.
All right, that's it. We have no more clarifications to make there, so I think we need to just start ranking these things.
All right.
Mark, do you have early what of these do you think are weak introductions to these games? First of all, I want to say that's always where we start is like what are obvious like low points. These are all high to me.
Yeah, I was not sure how I was going to feel about it, but I feel like in doing last week's exercise, my esteem for some of these that I immediately was like able and was going to write off have grown. Although I will say some of them I like talking about more than I like playing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, and I have not played the Twilight Princess HD remake, but and Twilight Princess has a ton of stuff that it has to tutorialize, so it makes a lot of sense that it is long. But I remember really disliking the opening of Twilight Princess just because it felt so long.
Right, it does take its time,
and so that's probably one that is lower for me. I think also I would say Majora's Mask is probably a little bit lower for me just because I don't think the opening of that game is particularly fun. I think it's a
Right.
little bit of like, especially the first time playing it when you don't really have like context for what's happening. Uh, I don't think it's super enjoyable. I think it's a little bit of eating your vegetables before you get to
Totally.
like understand what makes this game interesting.
Well, especially because you spend so much time in the Majora's Mask opening as the Deku Scrub, who is not as much fun to control as just like regular old Link, right? And I remember my first impression of it being like a stone cold bummer for that reason. Now, does it hurt me a little bit because this is the only introduction who includes Tingle? And I want to rank it low, but it includes Tingle? Yeah, that hurts a little bit.
Do you know what's another one that I have kind of mixed emotion about is Wind Waker.
Yeah.
It's another one where, like, on the one hand, there's a lot I like about it. I like that that Link has a little sister. I like that he has like a family, you know. I like that that's an element of the game. I like uh that's kind of it. That's
Well,
kind
right,
of,
right,
you know,
but
like
and it's always fun to see Zelda as Tetra. Like
uh-huh.
that's a fun character. But those are really just things that we like about the game in general, and not really something that we like specifically about the introduction, right?
Yeah, like Forsaken Fortress, I don't think is particularly fun.
It's not particularly fun, and it's not indicative of the gameplay of the rest of the game. Like if the rest of the game was like the Forsaken Fortress, it'd be a Metal Gear game, right? Hiding in boxes and
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, okay. I think we're starting to pull out some like so we're saying Wind Waker, Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, maybe among the weaker of the introductions. I think Zelda 2's got to go in there as
I
well.
completely agree. But I'm glad that I let you say that because
Right.
if I said it, noted Zelda 2 not like her, it would just be so
Okay,
expected.
but hold on though. I'm the one who's odd in this scenario. I'm the one who likes Zelda 2. I'm the weird thing.
Exactly.
I'm the strange piece of this.
That's
Mark.
that's why I think it's great that you said Zelda 2, so I didn't have to.
Yeah, well, I waited until we said 3 other examples first. So let's just talk about because just reviewing. I also actually, now that I'm looking at it, I think the original Legend of Zelda, while obviously being like economical and like doing what it can with what it has, is we could keep it in the top half here because we've sort of divided it in halves, but it would be the bottom of the top half.
Yeah, I it definitely gets like style points for being so iconic.
Yeah, absolutely. Icon status, undeniable.
Yeah.
We say a line from the beginning of this game, from the introductory chapter of this game, at the top of every episode.
Yeah.
So, like, it means something, but it's obviously very minimal.
Can I also say that I don't love the opening of Link's Awakening?
What?
Like, I love the opening
Yeah.
with the Link being tossed on the open
Right.
sea. But I having to go down to the beach and like push the little sea urchins around with your shield and then like get your sword, like I don't think it's very fun.
Oh man, so I do disagree with you there. So I will agree, I guess, that pushing the sea urchins with the shield, not super fun, but the fact that like you pop out of this bed and you have sort of the same setup that you recognize from Link to the Past, and that you'll sort of revisit again in Ocarina of Time. But you talk to Marin, and she's like, "What, Zelda? What are you talking about?" There's this like bold proclamation right up front, like, this isn't what you think it is. This isn't what you normally expect from these games. And then like you walk outside and follow this path, and you go right by a chain chomp. Like, stuff is weird right from the beginning, and
That's
the game
true.
is explicitly telling you like this is not what you expect from this series.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is it the most fun? No, probably not. So I can also see like not having it in our top 3 or whatever. But those moments are so good, and like you say, that sort of like opening the actual raft crashing on the Koholint Island is very cool. But it's okay. Let's try to order the bottom.
Okay.
The bottom 3 here, or bottom 4. Zelda 2, Wind Waker, Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess. Can I say one more thing about the Majora's Mask opening?
Yeah, please.
So one of my big hangups about Majora's Mask is that I find it too upsetting to play. That anytime you do good for any of the characters, you then end up undoing the good by traveling back in time. Essentially make them happy in one version of reality, and then erase that version of reality by time traveling it back and then not doing it again. The last time I tried to play this game, I did the Goron like temple, and was like I felt so good about like freeing them from like their eternal winter, and then it was like, oh, running out of time, got to go back in time, and then they were back to being snowy, and I was like, no, I can't save them, I can't save them. The opening of Majora's Mask is just that feeling,
Yeah.
right? Like you're just witnessing a doomed town. And like, yeah, eventually you're going to be able to rewind enough times that you'll be well equipped enough to stop the moon from crashing into them. But like, that's so far away.
There are some interesting. I mean, I think Majora's Mask is really interesting as a game, and like the
Mhm.
concepts, even in the opening that are presented to you, are so weird. Like, talk about Link's Awakening being strange. Like, Majora's Mask is
Yeah.
crazy. The Happy Mask Salesman, like, it's all so dark and weird, and you're like running around as this Deku scrub.
Right.
Everybody's mean to you. Like it's just like
It's true. It's true.
it's just kind of like it's just so bizarre, and so it's like really interesting.
It's really effective.
Yeah, I just don't think it's like particularly fun. That being said, I don't know that I would rank it at the bottom.
I don't think I put it at the bottom either. I think let me tell you what I think the two contenders for bottom are: Twilight Princess and Zelda 2.
And why not saying I disagree necessarily, but why like Wind Waker over Twilight Princess?
Because Outset Island is a more pleasant place to be than the Link's Village, the name of which I can't remember.
Yeah,
either.
I can't remember either.
And also like there are, we did just talking about like the first things you see and the first things you experience when you are playing a Zelda game. The designs of Link's family in Wind Waker, adorable. Everything's cute. It's fun and approachable, and you want to be with it. Twilight Princess, man, they're very specific and they're artful, but there are some like gross character designs in the game that are just like, I don't want to spend any time with those people.
It's true. I feel like I appreciate the graphics of Twilight Princess more with time, and maybe this is kind of like Star Wars prequel syndrome, where it's just been part of Zelda for so long now,
right?
That it's just like, oh yeah, like I remember when I played that game like 15 years ago for the first time. Like you have that like nostalgia for it.
Yeah,
even
I'm
though
just turning to dust over here.
But like, I feel like while we have learned to appreciate Twilight Princess and its presentation, Wind Waker has just improved with time.
Yes,
I think. And so I agree with that assessment. I would put Wind Waker over Twilight Princess. I would probably put Zelda 2 at the bottom. For me personally, I think I would do Zelda 2 at the bottom, Twilight Princess
above that, and then
Majora's Mask maybe, and then Wind Waker at the top. But I really could go either way with Wind Waker and Majora's Mask, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting that we've got sort of like the some of the darker openings right at the top here, even including Wind Waker, right? That like you spend so much time in this like forsaken fortress, you're just separating children from their families. You're not doing it. It is it is happening, and you are arguably a victim of it. But like the rest of these games all sort of start off with like a call to adventure. These are maybe a little bit more like victims of some weird circumstance.
Yeah, like pacing issues, or
right.
Just like, oh, Zelda 2 is kind of just a victim of not being The Legend of Zelda. And,
right.
Like, just mechanically being so different from that game.
Yeah. Well, and also like, yeah, I mean, what is the all like the opening chapter of Zelda 2 is probably we should probably get like a copy of the instruction manual, right? Like,
Right.
like it's just from such a different era.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. Like Zelda 2, Majora's Mask, and Twilight Princess, these are the three, other than arguably Legend of Zelda, because it's the first, and so there was no precedent. But like, they have so much. They are mechanically so different from the other games
Oh,
that they
that's
have to do
interesting.
so much work
Yeah.
in like giving you a tutorial, and so I think that makes them a little more like hairy and harder to love than some of
Can,
the other ones.
can we talk about whether that's true with Twilight Princess though? Like, is it has new stuff to teach you if you're playing it on Wii? You could be playing it on GameCube.
Yeah, that's true. I still feel like it has new things to
I mean,
teach
it
you.
teaches you how to be the wolf and like all
Yeah.
of that stuff, but like, I mean, arguably that stuff doesn't happen for like 2 hours, right? Like you're just doing normal.
Yeah, but it's all part of the intro.
It is all part of the intro, which we've already established, and we can't go back on any of these now. Um, yeah, okay. I guess it does ultimately have to teach you a lot, but like I think the bones that it's building from are almost more of the ocarina bones than Majora's
Yeah,
Majora's Mask.
that's fair, because I mean, you could say the Breath of the Wild has to teach you like a radically different way to play Zelda, and yet we do not have it down here at the bottom. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Man, the opening of Breath of the Wild is so good. All right. Okay. But I think you're probably right. Zelda 2 is the bottom of this. We had, I think, a hard time defining the beginning of this game.
Yeah, we really did. We went back and forth on whether it was like one screen
Right.
where you see Zelda sleep and then you walk out of the palace, or if it was like leading up to Parappa Palace, that first one, or what we finally settled on, which is
Getting
like,
through and
getting
then-
through it and then coming back.
Right. So perhaps just by sheer nature of it being ill-defined, we're putting that at the bottom of the list.
Okay.
And then I think Twilight Princess goes on top of that. And then between Wind Waker and Majora's Mask, what do you think, Mark Mitchell?
I don't really want to play, like, when I think of kind of how I'm doing this in my head.
Yeah.
Is like, if I were to sit down and play a Zelda game, like, which of these openings am I dreading having to go through least? And I think it's probably Wind Waker.
So you think Wind Waker above Majora's
I
Mask?
think maybe. What are you thinking?
I kind of want to give the edge to Wind Waker, and partially because I have had the opening, and now I know we've said maybe this doesn't even count as part of the introduction, but I've had the opening music of Wind Waker just like in my head as we've been like talking about this. Do you mind if we play just a little bit of it here on the show?
That'd be great.
Okay, right here. Pulling it up. Let's hope I don't get an ad. No ad. Very chill, nice drums. I mean, doesn't it just make you want to adventure?
Oh man. So I listen to a lot of video game music like while I'm working, and this is on so many of those like relaxing Nintendo musics to work to or study to type mixes. So yeah, I like this one a lot. And I feel like we said that maybe those title screens don't count, but could act perfectly in a tiebreaker situation like this, like giving one the edge over the other.
Well, does that mean we need to check out the Majora's Mask opening as well? Like,
Sure,
for
yeah.
comparative
I'd
purposes?
be super. I can't recall what that title screen is like, and if there's any music.
Here we go.
This feels right.
Oh, going around Clocktown.
I mean, it is a good theme.
It is good. And it is appropriately like morose.
It is, yeah.
Okay, well now I'm undecided.
Well, I For me, I even comparing those two, I think the Majora's Mask theme is incredibly appropriate, but it does not,
It's not as much fun.
it does not pump me up in
Yeah,
the same
yeah,
way
yeah.
that like the Wind Waker one does.
Right. It bums me out, which might be more appropriate to the experience of playing Majora's Mask.
Right.
All right. So let's look. From the bottom to the top here, or from the bottom to the fourth from the bottom. Zelda 2 is how many of these are there
There's
total?
10.
There's 10 total. Zelda 2 at number 10, Twilight Princess at number 9, Majora's Mask at number 8, and Wind Waker at number 7.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. I like that too. If we need to revise, we always can.
Open to it.
Which means we have left on the board Link's Awakening, A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, Skyward Sword, The Legend of Zelda, and Breath of the Wild.
So tentatively, I think I'd put Legend of Zelda next.
I think you're right. Again, it gets points for being iconic. I think you have to include the opening, the title screen for this as well. Absolutely amazing music at the beginning there, especially in the. Have you heard the Japanese version? That's like
Yes, I think we played it on the show before.
Yes,
when you got the Zelda Game & Watch.
That's right, because you can play either the Japanese Famicom version or the regular, and it just has like an extra little like warbly instrument that was on the Famicom disk system. In any event, I don't think it stands a chance against any of the rest of the top 5 here.
Yeah, I agree. Just kind of like doing a gut check. Do we like it more than we like Wind Waker?
No,
I don't think I do
I
either.
don't think we do. Do we like it more than we like Majora's Mask?
It's shorter.
It is. It's far shorter. Let's leave it there for now.
Yeah, let's leave it there.
We can revisit when later we decided that that's an insane choice. Okay, but so of the top 5, are there any that you think would come next? I guess Link's Awakening is what you were maybe campaigning for.
I think I would say so, and that's not, like the Link's Awakening opening chapter is nothing to sniff at, but I think compared to Ocarina of Time, Skyward Sword, Link to the Past, and Breath of the Wild, I would put it next.
Yeah, I will agree with that. I mean, there is something so amazing about Link on the beach and the slow pan up to a mountain that has an egg on the top of it. And again, the music there rips. It's so good, and especially in the remake, when all of the Game Boy instruments are replaced by a very specific like ensemble, a very specific small ensemble where you can hear like every single instrument.
Yeah.
Link's Awakening remake has a phenomenal soundtrack, just really really good. But it is not in our top 4. So let's talk about what we have here at the top: A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild.
So I will say one thing that A Link to the Past has going for it is such a small, or like comparatively to the other ones in our top 4, it is a short, concentrated experience that, but it tells such like a thorough kind of like story in that beginning. You know, it's like a rainy night. There's your call to action.
I mean, first of all, the rainy night.
It's so good.
I mean, come on. We're experiencing a rainy night right now in Los Angeles. And look, I love it in the game. I love it here. I think it's great.
Yeah. And so you get that call to action, this like psychic connection with Zelda. You're
Very
going through the
cool.
dungeon. You feel, you get this sword and you kind of feel like you're a kid using it for the first time. And then, you get your quest at the end, and then you're off on this adventure. Like, and the whole thing is so comparatively short, but it maybe like 15 minutes, and yet it is so.
It feels varied, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But like you're always like on the adventure. You're always in danger. But yeah, there's something about like being outside the castle, then being in the castle, then going into like the basement dungeon area where it feels like you are in an actual like dungeon of the game and not just like overworld, and then like escaping through like these weird catacombs and like busting out into like this church. I don't know, it's all very evocative. It's all very
just like tons of like different moods, like ebbs and flows. And again, the benefit of being a 16-bit game, where like the controls and what you can do, everything is so much less complicated. but the tutorials within
That's
this
true.
opening chapter just feel so much more organic
Yeah.
than some of the other stuff in like Ocarina of Time or Skyward Sword, especially Ocarina of Time, where it's the first 3D Zelda, and so they really have to hold your hand in the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
So Link to the Past is great. I don't really know where I was going
Yeah.
with that, other than to say that it's such a perfect experience unto itself. Just the opening of that game tells you so much
It
about
does.
what the
It does.
experience of playing it is going to be.
But also that can be said of Ocarina of Time as well. That Ocarina of Time has so much track to lay, and does so sort of expertly, right? And you're able to explore this uh, it's not actually a living, breathing village. Everyone is, kind of restricted to the spots where they are going to. That little dude, he's gonna be trying to pick up those rocks forever, right? But like being able to go into these little houses and like see the way these people lived and collecting the sword, the shield, going up against that little dork who's blocking your way, and then actually getting to the like dangerous part that's still in the forest, meeting the Deku tree, feeling that there's something bigger than what's happening. Excuse me. It's the Hobbit thing that we were talking about at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, that's true.
They're sort of hobbits.
Uh-huh.
But you're able to discover danger within the Shire, right? Like, I don't know. That's so good and so effective. And a very long time ago, you and I ranked the dungeons in Ocarina of Time, and I do not recall if the Deku Tree was number one, but I know that it was gunning for number one for a while because it's such a good introductory dungeon.
It is. It's just remarkable how well Ocarina of Time holds up.
Yeah.
And like how playable the opening moments of that game still are.
Yeah.
Even though it's like rudimentary, teaching you like rudimentary 3D skills that now everybody just kind of like takes for granted.
Right. Well, and I mean that is a good point. That like once you get out into Hyrule Field, that's when you do see the age of the game, where you're like, oh, this field isn't very big at all, right? Like, this felt big when I was little. It doesn't feel big now. I think the opening is just as effective, 20 years later.
Yeah.
So I may be gunning for Ocarina to be like at the tippity top. I think of these four, Skyward Sword is my least favorite.
I think you're right, and I didn't play Skyward Sword on Wii, but I played it with the HD remake from last year, and that was my first time experiencing it. I was blown away by Skyward Sword. I was really surprised at how much I liked it. And I think part of the reason I liked it is that I really enjoy the relationship that Link and Zelda have in the game, and kind of like the character growth. But it is so... I am glad that I came to Skyward Sword when I did after Breath of the Wild, because I think Skyward Sword, when it came out, just felt like, oh my gosh, it's the same
just
Zelda we played
and narrowing.
that we've played forever, but now they talk a bunch. Like, there's so much talking. And Breath of the Wild is really a reaction to that in a lot of ways. But I think Skyward Sword, for me, having played it after like Breath of the Wild, which is such a streamlined like gameplay machine, that I really appreciated that like relationships and the story of Skyward Sword, and like the characterizations of the different characters in it. But I agree that out of the four, it is the least good.
And I also just want to like drill in on that, like, because I agree with you that specifically the relationships between Link and Zelda, and Groose, like that trio, really strong relationships. I love the way they develop as the game goes on. I don't know that the introduction is why I like those. You know what I mean? That like
that's
it's
true.
It's stuff that happens outside the intro where like it those relationships become stronger.
That is definitely true. I think that in the intro, what is done really effective is showing the friendship between, for me, I thought it was really effective showing this friendship between Link and Zelda, and that they have a relationship that they don't have in any of the other Zelda games, where like they already know each other. They are friends, like they're already really close. I feel like so many of the Zelda games, even Ocarina of Time, like Zelda and Link they're from two different worlds and they're so
Right,
like
right.
removed. It's really interesting to have them be like peers almost. And but I completely agree with you that like like Fee and the old woman,
Ancient one?
the ancient one,
Yeah.
like that all of that stuff like definitely pays off later.
Right.
Uh,
But it is not necessarily because of what we get laid out in the introduction.
yeah, I agree with that.
So okay, happy to put Skyward Sword at number 4. Mark, that means that we're looking at for our top 3, not in this order necessarily: A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, and Breath of the Wild. Now, I think if you're talking about just like the best Zelda games, these 3 are going to wind up in your top 3. So like, is that? I'm not accusing our list of being hack or anything, but like, if you'd have told me that we were ranking anything from the Zelda games, would these 3 games be in the top 3? Yeah, I would think they would be in the top 3.
I mean, but it follows, right? That if these 3 games are in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
are the top 3 because they are presumably maybe like the best Zelda games as a complete package, that the strong opening chapters would be a contributing factor.
Let's talk about the beginning of Breath of the Wild, because I think that's the only one of these that we haven't really like drilled into sort of the beat by beat of what you experience, and it becomes tough to talk about it because, like the rest of Breath of the Wild, you can approach these 4 shrines in whatever order you want.
Yeah, you can approach them in whatever order, but unless you are going to like like you're speed running the game, and so you find like glitches that allow you to get off the Great Plateau early,
Mm.
you still have to do
Yeah,
everything.
you do have to do all of them. Yeah, but I mean, there's also just like the Great Plateau, just like as an area, is robust enough that you can like explore it. Um, you can explore it. Like it's big enough that you can experience the sort of like main gameplay loop of Breath of the Wild, of just exploring wild space, making your own goals as you go.
And the game gives you a lot of freedom to do that in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Like there is a very kind of like brief introductory sequence where Link wakes up and from hearing Zelda's voice, gets the Sheikah Slate, learns that to be able to run and climb and like jump and
Right.
do all that stuff. But then you're out on the Great Plateau into the open world, and the game directs you where to go. There's the old man that like is one of, when you run down the path, is right there for you to talk to, but you don't have to. You can
Right.
play
Right.
around. You can jump into the pond. You can like climb trees. Like you can do all of that stuff and start messing around with the physics of the world immediately.
Which, is obviously one of the things that the game has to introduce you to, is this like total freedom to approach it however you want. But in so doing is also like a hands-off kind of introduction. Like, can we count that as obviously it is part of the introduction, but like, is that a point in its favor that like it somehow shows you by not showing you? Does that make sense?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I do think what
These are all such good games.
I know. Well, what makes Breath of the Wild like different from Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past is that it is kind of like, I don't even want to say it's hands off, because there is a lot of direction from the old man where he's like, go do this thing, oh, that like thing looks weird, go over there and like touch
Right,
that, and then the
right.
tower appears,
And you're told
like,
to chop down that tree to use it as a bridge.
yeah, but it's just a lot of, but like Breath of the Wild is so different from Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past that I think it is it's difficult to rank, because the novelty factor makes it uh like, you're like, I don't know, is it better because it's different?
Right, right, right. Yeah. Um yeah, I don't have strong opinions here on which of these 3 is the best.
They are all so good.
They are all so good. I'm tempted to say Breath of the Wild is next.
That's
is
it.
is third.
I could definitely hear that argument. I was gonna say Ocarina of Time
Ooh, okay.
next, only because Ocarina of Time feels a kind of like an elaboration on what A Link to the Past does.
Oh, that's interesting. They feel pretty different to me. But I don't know that I can articulate why. They're both really effective calls to adventure. The thing is, Ocarina of Time is like tinged with that, like the sadness of growing up, which is such a theme of the rest of the game. Like seeing the Deku Tree die, having to say goodbye to your friend whose name I refuse to remember. All of these little beats are like end up paying off later in the game.
That is very true.
And it just yeah, it's all so I think Ocarina, for me, Ocarina's number one. And I understand that it's not just me making this list. By the way, we'll be friends when we're done.
Oh,
when we're done
right.
doing this,
Yes. Yeah, of course.
we didn't lay that out.
We didn't. No.
It's the definitive ranking, and we'll be friends when we're through, regardless of how it shakes out. But yeah, for me, I think Ocarina, from a gameplay and storytelling perspective, is the best opening chapter.
I really like that. You know, like the way you articulated it, I completely agree. Like, I think A Link to the Past is a really powerful opening chapter. I think Breath of the Wild, of course, is an amazing game. And the Great Plateau is a great tutorial section, but the Great Plateau doesn't really like pay off in any like meaningful way
True.
later, versus, and same with like A Link to the Past. Like, that experience sets the game up really well, but does not really like pay off in any meaningful way. But Ocarina of Time does.
Yeah.
Like, it like those moments actually have meaning within the game itself.
Within the story being told, and just like thematically too.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just like, oh, a plot thing is seated here that then pays off. Like it is telling the story of the rest of the game.
Yeah, so I think I would do Breath of the Wild third, then A Link to the Past second, and Ocarina of Time number
Mark,
one.
that's just exactly how I see it too. But I mean, you know, acknowledging that it's a close race there, right?
Yeah.
That there's no look, ask us on a different day and someone will argue another point more persuasively. All right, Mark, would you like to do this from the bottom to the top, our ranking of the top 10 Zelda openings?
Yes, let's do it.
Coming in at number 10, Zelda 2.
Number 9, Twilight Princess.
Number 8, Majora's Mask.
Number 7, The Legend of Zelda.
Number 6, The Wind Waker.
Number 5, Link's Awakening.
Number 4, Skyward Sword.
Number 3, Breath of the Wild.
Number 2, A Link to the Past.
And the number 1 best opening chapter intro of a Zelda game, definitively Ocarina of Time.
And we're still friends.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right, Mark, let's close this out. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. If you think that we got anything wrong here, or if you want to add anything we can't have gotten anything wrong. This is a definitive ranking, but we would love to hear your input. So hop into the Discord or email us Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com and let us know. Again, thank you for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the episode, you can share it on Facebook or Twitter, any old place where you can share stuff. You should follow us on Twitter. I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell, and the show is at Nin Cart Society. There's also a Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Anthony DeLuca made our logo, and our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. From my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying thank you for listening.